Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. I am Mark Moyer, and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. And I'm thrilled to have you from wherever you're listening, whether it's here in New York City, somewhere else in the United States, or anywhere else on the planet. I'm thrilled to have you. And I'm super excited because I just had an amazing conversation with Rudy Reyes. And Rudy is the man behind the Rudedog Show. And the Rudedog Show is basically one of the top podcasts out there. He gets all these top athletes, celebrities, comedians. I guess comedians are celebrities too, right? And he's a riot. We had a blast talking. You're going to love this episode. But before we jump in, just a reminder to make sure to review this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen, YouTube, etc. Send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com. I'd love to hear from you. And go to the website, markmoyer.com, and check out the page with all the podcast episodes to listen to those, or go throughout the rest of my website to get some great content on how to elevate your business or your career and really how to make a big step forward. Without all that said, let's jump in. Rudy Reyes, you're going to love this episode. Happy listening. I am super excited to have Mr. Rudy Reyes, otherwise known as the master of Rudedogness. Rudy Reyes, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Rudy, hailing from somewhere out west.
West is correct, Mark. I'm actually here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, a far cry from Southern California, where I am from. So very interesting. Thanks for having me on.
When you say a far cry, does that mean you're crying about being away from Southern California? Or are you?
No, the snow melts on my face and it makes it look like I have tears.
That is awesome. Well, you know, us Neanderthals here in New York City, when we say west of us, it's kind of like, everything is west of Manhattan. Jersey's west of Manhattan. Everything's west, right? The only thing that's east is that horrible city of Boston. Yes, touchy subject as my Yankees lost to the Red Sox once again. So, I hope that this is the only time we'll ever need to record this podcast with me saying that, and that next year at this time I'll be saying something completely different. But anyway, you are still, once again, an on-air personality. You host your own radio show. You've recorded, I think, between 7 and 8 million episodes. You've talked to almost every living and most of the dead athletes, I believe, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I need to know, what got you started with all it? Like, what made you wake up one morning and say, you know what? I am so much better than these other people on radio and on TV. I want to show the world I can do this. What was the one moment that, the light bulb went off?
It really didn't happen that way. And I had just woken up one day, and at the time I was working for Starbucks. And I had come to the understanding that there has to be something more than a job, at that point, it was a job. Starbucks is not a career unless you're a lifer. Then you have lifetime coffee. Really can't complain about that. I know I wouldn't. But I woke up one day and said, you know what? I just can't do this. My heart's not in it. I don't want to be there. It's just not something I want to do. So I called my manager and I said, you know what? I quit. Thank you. It's been, fun. It's been real, but it hasn't been real fun.
Of course.
And I had just decided to do something for somebody else. I am a Steelers fan. Don't hold that against me, all you New Yorkers. I just decided to start interviewing players and start really giving other people different perspectives. This is before the 30 for 30s on ESPN. The NFL Network didn't start doing this yet. It's not about a football life. It's about life. It had nothing to do with football. And I wanted to be sure that I was really giving a different perspective than probably anybody out there.
Okay.
With that came interviews from people like Jerome Bettis, Jeffrey, former kicker for the Steelers. And I started with Steelers players because I'm, Steelers fan. And all of a sudden it just decided to grow. And then here comes Steelers training camp in 2014 in Latrobe, PA, outside of Pittsburgh, in a little suburb. Of course, there's a lot of suburbs in Pennsylvania, but that's definitely one of them. And I said, I wonder if the Steelers would entertain the fact that I want to go to Steelers training camp. Not that I've ever been to Pittsburgh, not that I've ever been to training camp, and much less never stepped on a field where people actually trained for something other than donuts or coffee.
Okay. Right.
And so I sent the inquiry. I asked the Steelers, hey, is there a possibility, is there a way for me to actually be there? And they sent me a reply, and that reply was yes. So I arrived with the help of some very special friends in a place that I'd never been to before. And, of course, I love going to places I've never been to.
Yeah.
Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And it kind of escalated from there. I interviewed Ryan Shazier for the Steelers, linebacker, who was injured on that very horrific hit almost a year ago. And this was during his rookie year. I interviewed Heath Miller before he retired, and just had a fantastic experience. And that kind of helped propel me into kind of where I'm at right now. When I arrived back from Pittsburgh, I said, what of other players? Who else is out there? How do these guys get to where they're at? So I wanted to dig a little bit backwards, find out who these guys are. For me, it was about the entertainment value. But with that comes the responsibility to tell it honestly, truthfully, and with energy. And when you could do all of those things, it's something that people want to listen to. I decided to put my own website together, which is the rudedogshow.com. And it's kind of evolved into a hodgepodge of every event I've probably ever been to. Excuse me, from the ESPYs to the Humanitarian Awards, covering the 2018 NFL Draft, to interviews with Nadia Comaneci, Roman, multi-gold medalists, to Daniel Cormier of the UFC, who was a 2-belt champion, at least at one point, from my understanding. You never know. That stuff,
beltish
quickly, and trust me. And just really being able to tell the human side of how these people became who they are today. And in that kind of help propel me to want to be able to get to the next level. Of course, my desire wasn't really found out until I applied at a job that I'm currently at now, which is KGWN TV out in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It is a television entity, and wanted to essentially just live out my dream. I've worked, very hard, countless hours, countless time, countless, trying to get talent onto my show. It was originally on Periscope. Now it's just purely podcast due to obvious reasons, because I'm an on-air TV personality.
On air. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, so wait, let me take a half a step back. You, because, you also have, podcast voice or broadcast DJ voice. And now, is that something you had to, is a lot of practice in the shower? Is it, did you go to school to learn to speak like this? Or how does this all evolve?
Well, DJ voice, that's funny. No, I've been told for years from family members, from acquaintances, from a variety of people, and said, man, you have that voice. I said, what do you mean that voice? What does that mean? Please define what that voice actually is. And they said, well, you just have an on-air personality voice. And I said, okay, what type of on-air personality? Are we talking a ring announcer like Bruce Buffer? Are we talking on radio like, I don't know, Mark and Brian for KLOS used to be on air some time ago, no longer on air. Obviously, it's Brian, it's Mark, and Mark in the mornings or something. But I don't know. They always told me that, and so I went to voiceover school.
Oh yeah,
Cool. School. Yeah, it actually helped kind of define different voice styles. For example, I learned how to put things together like Bullwinkle and Scooby Doo, and maybe even Ronald Reagan. If I really wanted to, and just kind of, I don't know if you'd want a sample or not, but there's so many different types of genres that I could fit myself in. Growing up, I actually did sing as a child in front of my own family.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, of course it does. And well, depending on how your family felt about it, if they, of course, they're like, we got to go do laundry now. Bye. Yeah. Sorry, we're all going to go do the laundry now downstairs in the basement. Keep singing. You keep singing.
Yeah, where it's actually soundproof. I can't hear you. Yeah.
All right. So here's what I want you to do, obviously, because I'm impressed with the voices you say you can do. So, I mean, I think what would be really cool is to have you grab that box of cereal that I'm assuming is right next to you right now and just read the ingredients in Ronald Reagan voice.
Ronald Reagan voice. Well, the ingredients are actually quite simple. It's or no, I'm sorry, it's not Reagan. It's actually President Nixon. The guy who was the whole Watergate guy.
Yes, I've heard of him. Yeah,
I think most people have. Some of that has to do with. Well, anyway, you get the idea. Okay. Well, you asked for it, so
I did.
Yeah. My fellow Americans, I was not with that woman. That's all I got.
Oh, that's not all right. I thought it sounded like you were Clinton for a second there, but I know that was anyway.
Another presidential scandal. Yeah, I'm sure.
No, yeah. Well, that wasn't really a scandal. That was just it's just something that happened. Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, I'm looking. You've had a really almost like a whirlwind last 4 or 5 years, which is amazing, and it's led to you coming to Cheyenne. And it's tell everybody. I mean, I've been in Wyoming. It's an incredible state that is probably one of the least recognized states in the union. But tell our listeners a little bit more about Cheyenne and the people there and how everything compares to what you left behind in LA.
Cheyenne, Wyoming has its own, as they like to call it around here, charm. And charm ranges in a variety of ways, from people who are nice, the air that's actually really nice, and of course the water that's even nicer, because all those are clean.
Cool. You're so lucky.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, as far as visiting Southern California, would I'd like to have stayed in Southern California? Well, yeah, of course. Who wouldn't? The problem is that in Southern California, I'm basically nobody. There's too many people doing the same exact thing.
Interesting, yeah.
So there's a massive population of people that want to do the same thing, that are trying to do the same thing, and they're just another voice in the crowd. Here, I can expand. I could bring weekend sports to you, Wyoming sports, basketball, football, volleyball, local high school sports. There's and not that there's a ton to do around here, but what there is to do is just enjoy the scenery and enjoy the environment.
Well, and that's what you just said, is the environment. I think that what you'll find you'll start, I guess, getting more immersed in maybe is some of the more really outdoorsy type of sports activities. I mean, I'm guessing that football is fairly big up there, but I bet you're also in the middle of, there's skiing nearby, but there's also, I'm sure, cross country stuff. I think you mentioned it's already snowing there. What elevation are you at?
Highest peak going to the pass to go to Laramie, which is where the University of Wyoming is, 6,220. So where I'm at is probably about 5,600.
Oh, so you're up there. You're up a mile high there. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So have you noticed? I'm assuming you've noticed the challenges of, sort of like the wheeze factor after a little while because of the air being thin. Have you noticed that or not really?
I've already adapted. to the air. At first, it was really thin, just like the blankets I had on the floor where I slept without having a bed.
Hang on. Wait. Listen, I have to pause this for a second. I got to go around and get my tissues. Hang on 1 second. That was the saddest thing I ever heard. So anyway, go ahead. The thin blankets. What? Anyway.
The blankets were as thin as the air.
Yes.
So the blankets were thin to lay on and the air was thin to breathe. So needless to say, I had to make sure that I got a bed ASAP. So that way I can offset, obviously my lower back from killing me. So that way, I can live and be healthy and happy and go lucky and stuff.
Now, the work that you're doing right now with the television station, CBS News Channel 5 KGWN, is you're doing the sports reporting, but what's it like to work for? I mean, you've been in LA, you've been in Pittsburgh, you've been in some other bigger cities and so forth. What's it like there? I mean, is it, you mentioned that the word charming or charm is out there a lot, but do you find that and I want to say this the right way. I don't want to insult anybody, but are you finding that it's sort of the energy is as much there? Is it a lower energy, or what's it like?
Again, because of, I went around wearing shorts earlier this afternoon when it was snowing outside.
You were fired or what?
No, I was wearing shorts.
Oh, it wasn't the shorts you, all right, that's good. And?
It's just different. People are different. The attitudes are different. Their approach to living here and looking at things very differently than anybody else who does not reside here. It just has its own, I really can't explain it. It has its own esque about it. And if you want a small town, if you want to live in a place where the water's clean, the rent is less expensive than New York, Southern California, maybe even Florida. And of course, all my prayers go out to people that are dealing with what they have to deal with in the panhandle of Florida.
Oh, yeah. It's horrible. Yeah.
So I just, I don't know. I like it here and everybody seems to like me.
That's excellent. And now, I'm assuming you have some time to continue, as you said, recording your podcasts and so forth. How do people find you to be on the show, or is it more the other way around, or how do you get your guests typically?
Well, that goes back about 4.5 years worth of everything from Twitter to LinkedIn to networking, talking to people, saying, "Hey, I got this guy. I don't know if you want to interview him. He's only the former, quarterback of an NFL team." Oh, no. Why would I want to interview somebody like that for? So just networking, going to places, doing things. It's really about networking. It's asking the right questions. It's going through all the various motions and channels to find people who want to tell their story. Look, let's face it. What actual athlete does not want to talk about themselves? There's none. Everybody wants to discuss who they are, where they've been, how they got there, what they're doing now, and just it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but that's not one. That's only one aspect. The other aspects of creating a website, marketing, trying to get sponsors, things of that nature. All of that is just it's a whole. Unless you're an entrepreneur, this will not work for you. All you're doing is recording audio whenever you feel like it.
Right. Well, right. And at the end of the day, I've only done myself. It's maybe 15 of these. It's not. I'm not close to your 6 to 7 million, and it's it not only is it a lot of work, both pre and post and all that sort of thing, but I think part of it is to figure out, well, okay, what do I do with this? I've got these great conversations with people, and people seem to be entertained by it, and they're learning a lot, and they're gaining a lot, and so forth. But at what point are you able to monetize it? Is there a way to, take it to the next step? Is it something where the listeners will say, for example, wow, this guy, Rudy's got he's a great interviewer, a great everythinger. He's a great podcaster. So I'm going to hire him to do blank. I think that's probably part of it. I'm not trying to give away all the horrible secrets that lie underneath the Rudedog Show, but I have to think that's
really nothing. It's really nothing that I'm doing that somebody else can't do. I have people come to me consistently and say, "Hey, Rudy, how do I do what you're doing?" Well, here are the tools. You get a mixer. You get nowadays they have a mixer and a go-between like a Sennheiser, or you can use a Steinberg UR22. There's so many different ways. The bottom line is that if they want to get those tools to use it, and they've either went to school, have educated themselves, or have had enough experience behind a microphone, giving them the ability to feel comfortable having candid conversations with former athletes. Look, this is not something that I learned overnight. It's taken me a long time and many free hours and free time and really putting the hammer to the nail in order to get me to where I'm at right now. It's not easy. It's time consuming, but it's very rewarding. There's not a lot of people that can go around saying, "Hey, I interviewed Michael Phelps." Well, I actually did. But you can, if you put yourself in that situation and you have a goal that you want to ascertain, you can do that. But it starts with having the right tools in order to get you to the point where you can go cover the NFL draft. You can interview Mika Fitzpatrick. You can interview Lamar Jackson. You can interview Vander Esch, who plays for the Cowboys. You can do all of those things. So you have to stay driven, stay focused, and have an end game. If you don't have an end game, or in other words, the end answer to everything you're trying to accomplish, you're wasting your time.
Well, that sounds absolutely spot on. Now, out of all the people, you've interviewed tons and tons of people. Are there any that, give me one or two that stand out that you could say, you know what, this woman or this guy, it was just like the easiest conversation, and they were smart, they were articulate, they answered the questions, and you can just say, man, this was one of the best ever. Are there any that stand out to you?
There actually is. There's quite a few. I'd like to say that Lenny Dykstra was by far one of my favorite.
Interesting.
Because he's so colorful and he has so much to say, and he's so well versed in the game of baseball. And it's hard not to like Lenny. Not everybody does. Clearly his Twitter followers certainly like him a whole lot at 140,000 people. So, he's a winner. He won one with the Mets.
Yeah.
He played with Philly. How can you not like a guy like that who puts it all out there, who's raw? My other favorite one would be Sean Merriman. And Sean Merriman, former San Diego Charger, who played with them for, quite some time, even while Phil Rivers is there, now works for Channel 7 and does some side things. He works with Rob Fukuzaki on the Sports Zone there after it's like an NFL post-game show. He's very nice. Again, another straightforward guy, answered questions, very articulate, very well versed in the game of football. He'll tell it like it is. And I believe that those people who tell it like it is can sometimes be the best people to gain knowledge from, to gain an understanding about whatever topic, baseball, football, UFC, WWE, whatever it might be. So you really just have to find out what your topics are, what you want to discuss, put it all down, put it on paper, type it out, write it out, especially if you've already had the talent already agreeing to be on your show. Right. This is relatively unscripted for me. On television, it's a very tightly scripted situation where I have 2 minutes.
Right.
Where I'm used to doing a 2-hour show on the rudedogshow.com where I can go 2, 3, 4, 5 hours and I can, spill out some flarnin filth, so to speak, at least in the sports language. Yeah, I don't know. I just picked that up. I'm thinking of Bill Cosby and him being in prison and stuff. So Um,
Well, so with that said, have there been some conversations where you've been sort of looking at your watch and saying, how much longer do I need to talk to this person? Like, how can I just like pull the plug now? Or, oh my God, this is so boring. I'm about to fall. What? I mean, you don't need to mention any if you don't want, but I'm curious to know if you've had some of those.
There was one, and this is right before I decided to start doing sports. Matter of fact, I had interviewed Tom Kiefer, and of course, anybody who knows Cinderella back in the '80s, big hair band Cinderella. He was a front man.
Okay.
And I basically asked him the same question, and he says, "You really think I'm going to tell you that?" I said, "Well, I guess that's a no. I guess you're not going to tell me that." To be honest with you, there'd probably been, I would say, just one. I'm not going to mention who he is either.
Right.
But it's definitely he. I'm just throwing that out there. It is a he. But no, I mean, in all reality, not everybody is entertaining. Not everybody is funny. Not everybody has a value. I've had Sinbad on my show, who's absolutely hysterically funny. And will not find himself in a situation that Bill Cosby's in, speaking of comedians.
Good. Smart man.
Yeah, and I don't even play one on TV. So I look at a variety of things before I gather talent. We always look at personality, identity, who are they, where they been, and really see if there's a value, if there's a niche, if you will, in bringing them on. Of course, when I ask Sinbad, what do you give kids if it's not vegetation for dinner, if it's not broccoli? He said, give them a green popsicle and pretend it's, broccoli. So
asparagus, yeah.
I just said, oh, okay, well, that's great. So, but again, understanding who your audience is and being able to get those people that are entertaining, straightforward, and be able to bring value to your show.
Well, and that's the whole point, is to keep things moving right along, because if it starts hitting a little stagnant slide or whatever, then it's down or up the slippery slope, and it's hard to come back from that. Now, when you were back to Lenny Dykstra for a little bit, do you feel that people, whether it's like him or him, are comfortable talking about some of their other transgressions or issues, or not always?
Lenny, I'll be honest with you, he really tried to stay away from any type of issues and situations or whatever. I didn't really have any challenges with Lenny as far as trying to understand him from a language, barrier standpoint. He has his own language. He really does. He really does. Nice guy.
He seems that way.
Yeah, no, he's really nice. He's really kinetic. His personality is supercharged, and that's who he is.
Right.
Stay away from sensitive, topics. What happened between the Phillies? Why do you want to leave there? Stuff like that. You typically want to stay away from questions like that. Especially if you've done your homework accordingly. If a baseball player, whoever that might be, leaves because of PEDs, or they're not allowed in, Cooperstown or whatever, you don't really want to have that conversation. You kind of want to stay away from asking questions.
Well,
like
I was at an event. You know what? I won't say who was sponsoring it, but it was an event with, I guess I'll keep it vague, but with a professional baseball player, and the interviewer, it was just one of these like typical sort of fanboy experiences. It was a couple hundred people in a room, and the guy being interviewed, tell me what it was like to win the World Series, and what was it like to play for this manager. And it was like a lot of softball stuff, and everyone was clapping yay. But then the guy switched to, so what was it that caused you to do PEDs, or what on it? And the place went dead silent, and the guy looked at him and says, honestly, I've never been asked that question. And it was a question that wasn't, why'd you do PEDs? But it was something like that, where it was like, what, were you thinking of your kids when you did it, or some crazy question? And I've never seen a place like just go Like if you could look at everybody's face, they were all pale and wide-eyed and all that stuff. And, it was kind of surprising and shocking because the guy is like a super nice guy and universally loved and everything. And people were mortified that this interviewer asked that. And, so I always thought, well, gee, I wonder if for my episodes, am I going to dig deeper, not too deep or something? Cause I'm a pretty, happy-go-lucky guy. I like to be funny and la-di-da-di-da. But my very first episode guest was Theo Fleury, hockey player. He's up in Canada. And to make many long stories short, he's a very renowned public speaker up in Canada. And he went through basically sex abuse while he was playing hockey in the juniors. And his coach, it was a pretty big case up there in Canada, but his coach, basically a guy named Graham James, molested, I think it was hundreds of kids or tons of kids. Oh. And so anyway, Theo talks not just about, we don't really talk about his career where he scored almost 1,000 points. He was a superstar, several-time All-Star, all this kind of thing. But he talks about, one of the first lines he said on the podcast was, well, it was 14 years ago that I had a loaded gun in my mouth and I was about to pull the trigger. And I'm like, ooh, all right, here we go then. And he went off and running about his substance abuse issues and getting kicked out of the NHL and how he hit rock bottom because now he's recovered and now he's speaking about recovery and all that sort of thing. But, I was thinking, holy crap, for my first episode, like this is getting pretty a little deeper than I thought I'd be getting in the deep end. I didn't bring my floaties. So, but it was, but it was pretty interesting. So I was always curious to know how many of these players are ever comfortable opening up or not opening up. But look, at the end of the day, you're right. You want to keep, I think anyway, I'm not sure whether the listeners want to be sort of mentally challenged and simulated, or if they just like being nice little, hey man, I'm driving, don't tax the brain too much,
Well, that's actually a good question. And again, it shows the diversity of your understanding of whatever that person is either going through, or maybe you've never experienced that. But to help the listeners, it's all about engagement. It's all about getting them to understand what you're trying to say and how you're trying to say it, and to help them dive further into saying, wow, man, this guy, Mark, he's got some great stuff. He jumps all over the place in various podcasts, but each podcast is so streamlined because of the types of questions, the types of dialogue that's exchanged, asking candid questions. And I've asked them. I totally have. And you have to. It's almost a prerequisite. It's not like I'm Rush Limbaugh and I'm going to talk about politics and how this, that, and the other.
Right.
But at the same token, I want to make sure that when I ask those questions, that there is an endpoint to that line of question, so we don't keep chasing the tail on the donkey when the tail's already been attached. Whoa,
you caught me off guard with that. I was just starting to think of a donkey without a tail, and then with a tail, and then with an unattached tail, and then I got confused. So, but I appreciate the analogy. I think there's there's also a fair amount of donkeys in Wyoming. Is that correct or not?
I have yet to see one. In all fairness, I've yet to see one without a tail. And I've yet to see one with the tail. So you can take your pick.
There you go. All right.
But I have seen a horse, of course.
What's funny is that there are going to be some listeners that maybe are in Wyoming, and they're going to be like, oh my God, this guy Mark is such a complete idiot. Our donkey population is limited to Jackson Hole or whatever it is. I don't know. All right. Enough. Why now I'm talking about donkeys. Anyway, I want to jump into a little segment that I like to call Hit Your Mark. It's a little separate from my usual thing, but I just wanted to throw a couple quick questions at you and, see how you answer them. It's not going to be too challenging. I bet you can handle it. But one of the first questions I always like to ask is, did you ever have or when did you have it? Because I'm assuming the answer is yes. Did you have a guest that maybe asked you a question that completely threw you off base? You were like, huh?
asked me a question that was off base. Not really.
Well, I guess because they're so used to answering, right?
Yeah, no, I mean it's really about me driving the conversation, directing where it goes, and what avenues and roads and places and lanes and streets that I'm taking to get to the whole point of it. So for me to leave it kind of open, allowing them to ask questions, I didn't really segment it that way in order to allow them to ask me questions.
Got it.
I've never had that issue.
Interesting. Good. So with you've mentioned you've had Sinbad, but who would you say is the funniest or one of the funniest athletes you've ever spoken to?
Wow, that's funny. That's a funny question you ask about a funny athlete. I would say probably the most funniest of athletes, and of course, athletes are not comedians. So for them to ask a funny question or reply with a funny answer, other than a comedian, that's got to be tough. Wow, that's difficult. I would say Jerome Bettis, and the reason why I would say Jerome is because when I asked him what his thoughts were about running over Brian Urlacher when they played Chicago in the snow, and he says, I didn't really think that he was even there. I just went to the ends. I didn't have any focus. And I said, so wait a minute. So the body that was going to tackle you was somebody you didn't even see coming. You just felt a little bump in the road, So it's just kind of funny how this big, 250-pound linebacker with 4.240 speed, you didn't realize was trying to tackle you, just to get in the end zone. So I thought that was kind of funny for him to. He didn't say he was a bump or a blip on the radar. He was just saying that he didn't recognize that he was there. So I thought that was probably the funniest response.
Yeah, and I'm sure Urlacher probably is tempted to show him another time, maybe. Well, I'll show you how it's like to be there. It's like now. Let me take a step back. I want you to give me 3 people, dead or alive, that you would love to share a drink with, a dinner with, etc., but a conversation with. Throw out 3 names of people that you think would be really cool.
3 people that'd be really cool. I would have to say Sinbad would be absolutely hysterical. That would be so much fun because he'd try to give me a popsicle instead of
broccoli
for dinner. Yeah, and
that's awesome.
Say, that's cold. Why would I want that? Why would I even think about that? The next person, that's a toughie. I would have to say Shaquille Barrett from the Denver Broncos. And we can probably have dinner because he'd probably finish his plate before I would. He's a linebacker. These guys eat tons of carbs. He'd probably finish his plate before I finish mine.
Of course he will. And I'll order another one.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, can I get that to go, please? Yeah, exactly. Can you make it medium rare?
Hey, Rudy, you finishing that steak? Let me take care of that for you.
Yeah, it's like, sure. Hey, man, get off my steak.
Yeah, I know. No, that'd be interesting.
You can have the broccoli, but leave my steak alone.
Yeah, but see, you blew it because you can't have him at your dinner table because he'd be spending all the time eating and not even saying a word. He'd be like, chomp.
A conversation. That's okay. I can ask him real candid questions that I know he's not going to be able to respond. So it's okay.
Pass the butter. Pass the salt. Butter.
Yeah, exactly. Would you like a side of potato with your butter?
Yeah, exactly. So what? Come on, think of somebody else. Come on, get me fired up here. Somebody interesting.
I would say Nadia Comaneci, so she can talk to me about her gold medals.
Oh, interesting.
And how she won them, and the fact that she'd be wearing them around her neck while she was eating, and it would have to be over her bib. And heaven forbid food would get caught onto it, fall onto this beautiful, illustrious gold medal.
Well, the interesting thing with gold medals is that I'm sure Mr. Phelps will tell you that they're not exactly, the perception is, I'm curious to know what the gold content actually is in a gold medal.
I think it's somewhere in the genre of 80% gold, and the rest are other things like nickel
and
silver.
I mean, I'm curious to know what the value, like if you were to melt it down, which I don't even know why I'm talking about that. But, I often wonder when you see someone like Phelps with the 6 gold medals, is it super heavy or is it just like,
I think that it would probably be heavy if you wore all 25 of them.
Yes.
He's going to need like this mobile, I don't know, kind of like hire somebody to help carry them. Something, go around New York, Manhattan or something, and
he needs three more necks. He needs more necks to walk around with. That's all it is.
If he was either Medusa or triple-headed dragon, I think he may be able to get away with it. But for some reason, I just don't think he would probably take them out.
That's a cool image, by the way.
Yeah,
the multi-headed dragon with his head on it and all the medals on his.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know where that went. I've never thought of that in my entire life. Mark, you're the first person I've ever spoken with that's pictured Michael Phelps as Medusa with medals around each. Okay, great. See, there you go. I'm unique. Told you. Now I know. Yeah. All right. So going forward, I think what I want to do is just, this is called Make Your Mark, the Make Your Mark podcast. And what I'd love to hear from you sort of for a moment is, how do you want to make your mark going forward, Rudy, in terms of whether it's the guests you speak with or the impact you make through your TV work? I mean, what are you trying to do? What's your...
Well, that's actually a really good question because I want to make sure that I'm able to do a variety of things, from inspiring others who are struggling with the same exact thing that I was struggling with, which is basically just trying to be noticed, someone to take notice, someone to look at the hard work, someone to take that into serious consideration when applying for a career type job, whether it's in radio or in television or, one superseding the other and so on. To be able to inspire others, to let them know, look, there is an end to all of this, despite the no's. I've had no's from the Lakers, I've had no's from the Raiders, I've had no's from Fox Sports, I've had no's from Sirius XM, and I still get these no's because I was so determined. I over applied to all of these entities, thinking that maybe one of these, applications are going to fly onto the top of the deck and say, oh, we want this guy. Instead, they were found in the Oval file, which we know is trash, and an email sent out with the generic, well, we thank you for your interest. However, we've moved on with other people, yada, 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 and blah, 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 and so on and so forth and such. But to realize that you can, you need to, you have to, you must stay passionate, aggressive, and to not take no for an answer.
Well, that's it. And you know what? And a lot of times what I try to do in part of my coaching is I say to people, it's not necessarily a no to you specifically. It's not that they're saying no to Rudy. It's that they're saying no in general. And all it is simply maybe a hurdle that you can learn to jump over. And it's something that it's all about really trying to figure out what are the objections and how do I get past those objections. And, it sort of reminds me of 100,000 years ago or so when I was a kid and my sister, my younger sister, she would try to ask my mom, can I go sleep at so-and-so's house tonight, sleepover? And my mom would say no. And my sister would scream and yell and then run to her room, slam the door and be upset. And then I would ask can I go next door and stay over at, so-and-so's house? And my mom would say no. And then I'd say, well, why not? And she would say, well, because your homework's not done. So if I got my homework done, can I go? Well, yeah, but you haven't taken a shower yet. So if I take a shower, can I go? And I'd keep on overcoming the objections. So finally she caved and said, all right, go ahead. And my sister would be so pissed off. She wouldn't understand and she'd always say, oh, mom, you're mom's favorite. And I was like, no, I just figured out how to get past the objections. And I think that's what a lot of this stuff is. How to get noticed is really how to, sort of make that, whether it's the one extra phone call or the one extra thing that your competition's not doing, right? I guess that's the whole point.
Right. You have to be able to differentiate yourself based on your body of work in order to allow someone the visual. And again, I get these requests all the time. Can you look at my podcast? Can you listen to the format? Is the audio good? Do I need to create a website? The answer to that is yes. And I have no issue giving somebody an honest opinion. And the theory about all that is this. If you're going to ask me a question and I give you the answer you don't want to hear, then you shouldn't ask the question. And what the interpretation is that to some, not to all, to some, is that to do a better job making sure that before you ask those questions that you have done your absolute best in every aspect of what you're trying to accomplish before asking that question. But you have to expect the answer if you haven't done your homework.
Oh, geez. I thought I gave up homework a long time ago, and now I'm scared.
Give me both.
And I'm not going to ask you any more questions because I don't want your answer. I'm scared now. But I completely agree with you, and I think that was a great statement. That was really well said. Well said, Rudy. I love it. Love it.
Thank you very much. I'll be here.
Oh my God!
I don't know until the end of the podcast.
Try the veal. Anyway, jeez.
Check, please.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of check, please, we do have to wrap this up. I could probably, as you know, I could talk for hours. You could talk for hours, and goodness knows we might break people's earbuds or something. But I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been fabulous. Again, the best way to chase you down or to reach out to you is to either go to rudedogshow.com.
Yep, the Rudedog.com. You got it.
And also, or just maybe wait outside your TV studio. Can they do that? Can they stalk you there?
Oh, they can stalk me on Twitter. They can stalk me on my Facebook fan page. No.
I meant wait outside your studio door. They can't do that?
If they want an autograph.
If they want an autograph. Oh, jeez.
If you want to fly all the way to Denver and then bus it to Cheyenne, Wyoming to get an autograph, then you definitely deserve one if you want to go that direction.
Oh, dear God. Okay. And I just pictured driving through the snow going, wait, who the hell is this guy anyway? And why am I going out there again? What am I doing? I'm an idiot. Oh, my Lord. Well, look, thanks so much for tagging along and being on the Make Your Mark podcast. Appreciate you being here. It's been a blast, and I did actually learn a lot. I was guessing I would, and I did. Thank you. You're the best.
No problem.
You're the best, Jerry, the best.
I appreciate it.
And have a great rest of the day. And look, I wish you the best of luck in that Cheyenne winter. But seriously, I want you to learn how to ride a horse, wear a cowboy hat. Have that I've got the Indiana Jones look going there with you, and go herd some cattle or something.
I'm probably going to leave that to people who have been doing that maybe their entire life.
All right, fine. I was just giving you career advice and you shot it down. Anyway, I'm
not going to change my life. A horse wrangler, even though there is a rodeo in town this weekend.
Oh, cool. You got to check it out then. Yeah. All right. Anyway, listen, have a great rest of the day and night and so forth, weekend and week and so on, and bundle up in the snow. And thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.